we're having this conversation at an interesting moment, though, because you have had quite a busy year. And before we even get to this year, let's just take a few years back. So for some context, Believe, you a music company that expands globally. You own a music distribution service in TuneCore. But 2021, the company goes public. And then a few years later, given all the changes that we've seen in interest rates and there, you make the attempt to buy the company back with the consortium led by you, but then it lends itself to this very open bidding process between you and one of the major labels, Warner Music Group, and you eventually get the company back. So that was a lot for me just to say. I can only imagine what it was like to go through. What was that process like?
Well, I think it's the first question I like to answer is why did we go through the pain and what it was like? Why we went through the pain was we were very intentional about the process. Our view is very simple. It's, as you mentioned, we've been growing as a company. We think there's a fantastic opportunity with a digital transformation in the next 15 years, and we wanted to be able to capture it. And capturing it means accelerating development, making acquisitions, scaling. And so we wanted to have a set of shareholders who understood music to come alongside us during that phase. So we're very intentional, very specifically in these processes. And before we went public in 2021, we asked ourselves the question, should we go public? And we have TCV as a shareholder. TCV is also an investor in Netflix and Spotify. And I called Barry McCarthy, who was the CEO of Spotify at the time, and I asked him, it's like, hey, Barry, funds are asking me to go public. What do you think? And he's like, well, it's one of the best piece of advice I've had is, well, you know, what you're doing is just raising money. So be practical about it. If money is cheaper in the public market, go public. If money is cheaper in the private market, go private, which is exactly what we did. So we went public in 2021. And in 2024, we felt the valuation of the group was not at the right level. And so we went public. It's a little bit more painful than just saying go public, go private. But that was it. And then, yeah, we had a conversation with Warner Music that came in that took a lot. We knew there was a risk that could happen, and we managed it. But our intention from the beginning was to remain independent and be able to play the transformation, especially in the artist market, that we think is going to happen in the next 15 years.
Did you like being CEO of a publicly traded company?
Loaded questions. Actually, what I find is when you're a $1.5 billion market cap, you're not a big market cap. So it's the investors that invest in you as a company tend to invest for the long term. So the investment horizon doesn't change that much. And then when you have good people to manage investor relationships, it doesn't take that much time. What is interesting about it is the fact that you interact with a lot of investors who are educating themselves about the music industry, and that's helping with your thinking. And one of my key takeaways from this conversation has been the music industry is much more complex in terms of business model, publishing, recorded music right, distribution, record labels, merch, etc., Gen AI, than many other sectors. And it's very difficult for investors to actually grab all of that complexity, and it is complex to explain it.
Yeah, I could imagine. And thinking too about what the past year has been like for you with this process, this also shaped the conversation a bit that we're going to have today, because we initially were going to have a more traditional conversation talking about global trends, just given the nature of your business. And then this Paul Graham essay about founder mode came out. And just for show of hands, who's familiar and has read the essay by Paul Graham about founder mode? Okay, good show of hands in here. Well, I sent it to you and I said, would you mind if we talk about this instead? And you sent me back the most thoughtful response that I could imagine. And I said, okay, yes, that's exactly what I imagined and why I thought it was helpful. So it would be good to hear from your perspective, from a high level, what was your takeaway from Paul Graham? So this is Paul Graham from Y Combinator, for those that may be less familiar. But what was your takeaway from Paul Graham's perspective on founder mode versus manager mode, and then how you look at it with your company?
Yeah, and I think for everyone, so what the debate is essentially how, as a CEO company, you create value. You create value for the shareholders and for the company. And founder mode, if I try to summarize, is essentially founder is a pain in the neck, gets into the details of everything, and manages the company with skipping levels down and into details. And the manager mode, on the other hand, is really the role of the CEO is to be able to hire great people, empower them to do what they need to do, and let them do their things. So I think it's a really interesting debate. My balance is in between. And I think it's an evolution. When you start we started Believe in 2005 with 3 people. You're in founder mode. You take out the trash, you do coffee, you do everything, and you pay attention to details. I've spent weekends scanning heavy metal covers back in 2005 and typing metadata on Excel. So you go through all of it. And then as the company grows, it's all about one of the things that I do now. You move to manager mode, and you have to find a balance. And the way it works is every week, I ask myself, I look at my agenda, I reflect on the past week, and I ask myself, hey, at this stage of the development of Believe, what should I be doing, and what should I not be doing? Where can I find other people that can do what I'm doing in a better way? And that's really to be able to focus where my unique value is. And that's one question that as a founder, you've got to ask yourself all the time. And that's how you start completing your organization progressively with great executives. And that for me has really been the key. And it's a combination of progressively as you go, finding the great people that will come and complete you. And I would say where the balance is for me is where the founder mode really works is, so you do founder mode, manager with the right people, it's to drive innovation. And to drive innovation, I think, as he said, you have to fly high and deep dive. Fly and deep is exactly what we need to do. And for me, it's a mix of, this is the balance between founder mode and manager mode. You have to fly really high to have a comprehensive view, and then you have to go deep. Take an example. One of the things where we as a company are much better than our competitors is at maximizing value of our catalogs, of our artists in the digital space. I've spent literally hundreds of hours in the past 2 years going super deep in looking at the mathematical algorithm that we're using, that our own AI is using to select the track, put them out, analyze. And so you have to go deep, then you have to elevate and say, hey, what works, what doesn't work, where do I move? So it's that constant balance between one and the other that's creating value. What I found is on innovation, really cutting edge topics, at least for me, that's where I add value through the founder mode and where I go deep. And the rest, we've got a team of great executives was driving the execution.
Right, there's nuance with how you go about it. And I imagine that it probably looks a little bit different when you look at each aspect of your business, because you have the Believe side of the business where you have artists there, but you also have the TuneCore side of the business where that's a company you own, but they also have a CEO and there's leadership. There's leadership that was there even before the acquisition came in. Does your oversight and how involved you are look a little bit different with the distribution company as opposed to other elements of the company?
I think it's to do your job right, you have to know the business. So the way, and what I think for me is important to know the business, as you mentioned, we have 4 different business lines. We build record labels, and some of our record labels are among the biggest record labels in a number of countries. We have a very large distribution business. We have TuneCore DIY business, and we have a publishing business. And so all of the 4 heads of each of these businesses are reporting into me, because each of these businesses, you don't do an artist contract at a record label with the same level of risk, with the same level of service as on TuneCore, obviously, or on distribution. And so, but it needs to be consistent overall. And then I have 3 regional managers that are covering Asia, Europe, a number of other territories that are reporting into me directly because I want to understand the market. Asia dynamics are not the same. You don't develop artists in Asia in the same way that you're developing in Europe, at the same way that you're developing them in the US. So you need to understand the nuances to be able to drive, make sure that you have the right people organization, and to be able to drive the product and technology that you also need to power the work of our teams.
And that always seems like that's the nuance of this balance between founder and manager, because a lot of the discourse that came out after this, well, in the essay itself, they used Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO of Airbnb, as an example of this, and the thought that he had shared with that, and he had talked about in interviews since then, is that he went deep into manager mode, where he wanted to empower people that are better at jobs than he is and let them do their thing. But then he talked about all the challenges that happened with that. But then, of course, there's likely more nuance there, and there's been a lot of response where he's then came out and shared a bit more of the context nature of that. And I have to imagine that for you, there's a few things that are different here, because one, I mean, like any business, there's a global aspect. You may not be able to touch every corner of the country or every corner of the continents that you're working in, but you need to make sure there's people on the ground in Asia, because even within Asia, there's different pockets there of like how people are operating. Even within Latin America, there's different pockets there. These areas are not monoliths, so you need to have an understanding from a high level, but you also need the people to help to make that leadership structure work.
Exactly. I think it's really about, I think, innovation and execution. And to your point, I think in innovation, what we think, our core thesis of what's going to happen in the next 10 years is very simple. It's regaining control. Our view is the music industry has very largely lost control of artist development levers in the past 15 years. I mean, our job as a record label is to develop artists. The way that you develop an artist is understand the creative positioning, how to position the artist in the market, and then leverage levers. And these levers, they're Spotify, they're terrestrial radio, they're a number of things. When you move from traditional record labels to digital record labels, you move from music discovery that's happening digitally to artist development that becomes digital. And so on this topic, I spend a lot of my time around regaining control of the levers. Talking to TikTok, which is, hey guys, your algorithm-based recommendation is great, but it's completely random. I don't know what artist it's going to help and which not. And I want to have control of this. So how do we organize it so that we have control around it? And then that requires to go deep on a number of things. And on the execution side, and that's about, I would say, 10% of my time and 10 to 20% of my time, and it's really important value. 80% is execution, controlling execution, because to your point, you're not doing the same thing in Asia as you are doing in Europe. You're not doing the same thing in the record label as you are in distribution. You need to train people. You need to build the product. You need to build the technology. In the technology, you need to build a royalty management system. You need to build data system. You need to build video management system, audio management system, Gen AI technologies. And each of these things your ability to succeed at developing them is really about directly related to the time and the attention that each of your team member is spending around them. And so it's one of the exchanges that we had is, the key for me is one of the best sentences I've heard about what it is to be a CEO is I think Tim Cook. And it took me a little bit of time to understand it, and I discussed it. And Tim Cook says, well, what I spend my time on is people, strategy, execution in this order. And I'm a complete believer in that. It is about having the right people. Once you have the right people, and it's the right people with the right culture. Where it's about what mission do you want to accomplish and how do you want to accomplish it. The values are at least equally important creating the culture than having the right people. And then once you have the right people, you're confident that you can build the right strategy and you do that. And then execution, making sure that you have the right org design, the right people in each of the core functions.
I remember when you sent that to me, you sent me the video, and I was like, this is good. Yeah. And it was helpful to think about that because I can see this and hearing you talk about how you've just thought about that organization as well. And then it made me think a lot about Tim Cook as well because he's someone that maybe looked at more so as the manager mold, where he follows up after one of the most famous founders that Silicon Valley has had in Steve Jobs. So again, it's about the balance, and people have clearly seen the success that Apple's continued to have in the space ever since. And it's funny, I don't know if you saw this, but when people were going back and forth talking about founder mode versus manager mode, they looked at the market caps of Airbnb over the past few years, and they compared it to the market cap of Uber, where Uber, of course, is no longer being ran by its founder. It's being ran by a CEO that came in from Expedia that's now leading the company, and how it's just continued to grow. But again, it's hard to look at that as just a blanket one or the other. It really depends on the company. And I assume that there's often things in music that make it unique compared to just more general or broad tech in other industries.
Well, I think what's fascinating in music is, I mean, the reason we named the company Believe in the first place is the dream. I mean, there's dream in music. There's dream and aspiration. Our role is to support creators, artists in their aspirations and in their journey, and that's. I think that's one of the key elements of that. Sorry, I forgot the question. Yeah.
Oh no, we're talking.
The jet lag is catching up with me.
It was more of a prompt than a question, but talking about CEOs and management mode versus founder mode, and then we talked about the Uber versus Airbnb example, but how music specifically has distinct aspects from that.
Sorry, and what I love in music, what's super interesting is music is one of the most complex businesses to run because it's, especially in this world, and we've spoken about it, you have a technology component. So you have to manage a very industrial, technology-based run organization on that side of a business. And you have a creative side of a business. And our view is that the key to support creators is never within one individual. It's related to the ability of organizing a team of 3, 4, 5, 10 people around an artist to support the success. Someone who is a record label, the success of our record labels, they come from the fact that we have great creative people. They can talk to the artist, sit with the artist, understand where the artist wants to go. And if you only have great creatives, then you can support 1 or 2 artists, and after 2 artists, it's chaos. So you need someone who is much more business-driven, organization-driven, to sit side by side, and someone who is going to be very marketing, brand building, audience development driven, and that's the complementary of these qualities that really drives the success, and then the alignment with the artist management and with the artist. So, and I think that's what in my view, makes the music industry so interesting is that you have the combination of all of these skill sets that are combined, different personalities, different ways of working, that you need to find the best way of collaborating and working together to create the value for the artist.
I hear a lot of similarities with the conversations we had earlier with Troy this morning, or even with Tunji after that, where they talked about the balance of the creative and the balance of the business and creating that artist infrastructure. And that's how you have development. That's how you have artists that can build these truly sustainable careers. And it takes time, and you can't shortcut any of that.
You can, it takes time, and I would say it changes all the time. I was looking recently at our stats. We've put at the core of the CSR approach for Believe people development. We spend 15 hours per year on average, in training our own teams. And it's super important because the Spotify algorithm, Marquee, or the TikTok marketing tools, today the way they work is very different from the way that they're going to be working 6 months from now and a year from now. And if you do not have people that build the trainings so that all of our teams in the world, with about 2,000 people in 50 countries, from Indonesia to France to the UK to the US, have the same understanding, you're not doing our job. Our job is about bringing the expertise in the development. So we need all of our people to know the best way, the best practices at any point in time. It all goes back to, it starts with the people, and in a world that's fast changing, it is about permanently upskilling and reskilling all of our people in the organization.
That makes sense. Shifting gears a bit, let's talk a bit more about Believe strategy itself. And there was an interview you did recently where you talked about some of the M&A deals that you want to continue to do, especially now that you and the consortium have bought back the company. You said that in the next year or so, you want to spend 200 to 300 million euros to make strategic acquisitions on mid-sized companies that can help push things forward for you. What are the types of companies, just given the way that business is set up, that can help you and Believe get to that next level?
Well, there's a couple of things. We do on average 3-4 deals per year, and we spend about 100 million per year on average. We want to do 2 or 3 times that. We're currently positioned as a number 1, number 2, or number 3 player in 8 of the top 20 markets. We want to be, within the next 5 years, we want to be a number 1, number 2, and number 3 players in 15 of the top 20 markets. So we're building organically very successfully. And we are partnering or acquiring companies or partnering with teams of entrepreneurs to help supercharge that growth. What we're looking for is, it's really, we look at about, I had recently touched base with our team. We look at 500 companies per year on average, and we end up doing 4 or 5 acquisitions. It's all about strategic alignment and cultural alignment. Strategic alignment is about, do we have a team of entrepreneurs who have an ambition to grow their business to the next stage, and where we can support by providing the global Believe platform, by providing financing, by providing strategic consulting. They can scale from 5 million to 10 million to 50 million businesses. We're looking, I would say, for digital-minded entrepreneur, because artist development is becoming more and more digital. We have demonstrated success, and we need the support of a platform, and we have the ambition to go further. And the way we partner is generally through majority investment across the territories. We let those entrepreneurs do what they need to do best, which is nurture, develop artist relationships, and then we partner to support. So we're looking, the core territories we're looking is, we're starting to look at the US to build on with a great roster of artists on TuneCore, and some of our artists are seeking additional services. We want to be able to satisfy this. We have more and more, we listened to Alibi earlier from Sef Dalitza. We have more and more, we've had 3 top 10s in the US in the past year. We want to partner with great entrepreneurs in the market to ride the transformation of the market in the next 5 years.
There's 2 headwinds that are trending in that direction that makes sense. So you mentioned the global records in Romania example. Because of the way that streaming operates, we see more and more local cultures having their music that is rising to the top, and there is that connectivity that's required, and that's going to be more likely to come from a company that may be based and already doing business there. So if those companies are rising, there could be global records in other regions, other parts of the world that will inevitably come up. So that makes sense. And the US piece is interesting because on the surface, it may look and it may make you think that, okay, well, the US is the most developed market, what are the opportunities there? But the change that we're seeing happen here is there's a lot more shift towards independence than some of the other markets because of how mature the market is.
Yes, and I would say independence is just another term for modern for me. Because what is it being independent? It's about formally, and the way you're seeking a partnership relationship. You're saying, I don't want a control relationship. I don't want someone who controls my creative work, who owns my assets. I'm looking for partnership-based relationships. So that it's a conversation of equals around a creative artist and a team that's going to help that artist develop. And so that's part of the independence. That's about, associated to that is the transparency, it's the expertise that you need, and it's the fairness in the deals, the balance of the deals. And so you're looking for people essentially who are looking to build trust relationships over the long term. And I think we see this in music, but we see this in all sectors. I think and part of the explanation for me is the fact that artists now self-produce and they self-develop, many of them, at the first stage of their career. So they're really smart about it, they think about it, and they're not, rightly so, willing to relinquish that control. They want to be associated. So that's why I do think we'll see more and more artists who are seeking this type of relationship.
Right, it's only going to continue going on more and more in that direction. Well, Denis, I'm sure we could continue and have a conversation twice as long as this, but we'll pause there, and I'm sure we'll revisit this at another point. Denis Ladegaillerie.
Thank you, Dan.